First is thank you for joining. We're going to record this session so that people can watch it again if they want, but mainly it's so that if anybody didn't have a chance. Ellen was desperately trying to get on from Fairbanks, didn't appear to be working for her. So I am going to be giving her PowerPoint, and what we would like to do is I'll give you this short PowerPoint, maybe 10-15 minutes, and then I won't be speaking anymore. We'll just be doing the typed chat. And as I mentioned before, the reason for that is because that allows us to have a nice transcript for everybody else to read, and it's always surprising to me how many people can actually who do actually read the transcript, so that's good. So we've got Natalie joining us. Natalie, when you get a chance, if you could tell me that you can hear, hopefully you can hear and have speakers or headphones or something. So, so I'll just start in so that we can get this moving, and then people will probably join midway through, and I'm not going to stop anymore to make sure that they've got headphones. If they can't hear, I'm sure they'll let us know. So artist intent, I don't know if any of you have thought about this word before, or this phrase, artist intent, but it is something that is out there. There are various organizations working to document artist intent. It has implications not only in the curatorial field or exhibitors field, but it also has implications for conservation of these artworks. It's something that Ellen and Jackie Fernandez, who is online with us, but she won't be speaking, they have been thinking about this with regards to artifacts in their own collection, and they will be presenting a session at Museums Alaska. So this is meant to just kind of be the start to this subject or this topic. It's not meant to be the end of it by any means, and so we're just kind of priming the pump right now, getting people to be thinking about it, and hopefully what we bring up today in this chat session, we will be able to continue on from there at Museums Alaska and then further on down the road. So that's what the title is, and I'll give you my next slide. So the Rasmussen Art Acquisition Initiative started in 2003, and I think probably everybody on here, pretty much except for maybe Kelsey at the Park Service over there. I don't know, Kelsey, if you guys have participated in the Art Acquisition Fund or whether you're eligible or not, but it's a fund that is administrated by Museums Alaska. It's the money comes from the Rasmussen Foundation. They very generously have donated money. It is, and you can see on there, I'm not going to just read out the slides, but they had very specific goals for it, and these goals are listed on their website. And they've given a lot of money over the past 10 years, and if Mike Hoffield was on here, he would tell us exactly how much, but it's, and maybe even Heather knows, you could type it in, Heather, if you know, but it's okay. So how about a show of hands now if people can hear me now? Okay. All right, so evidently I just lost my mic briefly. Let's make sure Dennis, Heather, and Karina, Kelsey, that you all can hear me. Okay. All right, looks like it's working now. So I'm not sure when it lost the mic. I do appreciate you telling me that you can't hear. So as soon as you feel like the slides are moving without me talking, I would appreciate somebody putting up their hand or something. And then hopefully that won't happen because I didn't click on anything. We just lost the audio. So what I was saying is that this, with the Rasmussen Foundation Art Acquisition Initiative, this idea of collecting artist intent and how we do that is part of the number 3 reason, or what they hope to accomplish with the Art Acquisition Fund, and that is that it encourages Alaska museums to develop formal collections policies. So within the developing a formal collection policy, capturing artist intent would be a part of that. So, so Jackie, if you're okay, could you just put your hand down so that I know that you don't have an issue? Okay, thank you. All right, so next slide. So Ellen really started thinking about this during our recent move of collections, and I know that some of you online here actually came down to Juneau and helped us, or came up to Juneau as it were, and helped us move our collection into new storage. And we were moving a lot of pieces that were contemporary art pieces by artists who are still living, by Alaskan artists who are still living and still available. And because we were moving a lot of these pieces and moving all of our collection, we actually noticed damage that had occurred, and other issues came up that it would have been beneficial to know what the artist's intent was. And so that was sort of the genesis of this idea. And this photograph that you see was taken in June as we were moving into our new storage bins. So artist intent, there are kind of 3 main areas of artist intent. And we already do part 1, that's why it's in black. But and we do part 1 already as, oh God. So it looks like they've lost audio again. So if anybody can hear me, please just indicate, put up your, all right. So, all right, so I'm not sure what is going on, but this generally doesn't happen. We can generally get a little bit better, but the internet has been a little bit crazy today with the state. This morning we had lost all internet, so so Jackie has hers now. So Andrew, are you still back on? Are you back on? All right, Kelsey's got it. All right. Well, let's hope this doesn't continue. I'll try and get through these slides as quickly as possible. Thank you. Okay, so sorry about that, guys. I do not know what's going on here. I have a feeling it is part of this issue that is happening with the internet today, and we lost all of our internet this morning. So anyway, I'm going to try and move as quickly as I can through this because this is going to get a little tedious. Thanks for letting me know that you guys can hear. So, all right, so The two that we don't have, the first one we do have through the application, the next two, exhibition, which is ideas about how to mount an object and display it. And the third one is conservation. So how do we repair this? What materials should we use to do that? What materials were used originally? That would help us. And what techniques were used originally? Those would be things that would definitely help us. So I'm going to move right along. Here's an example of an artwork that was collected in 1984. And I'm going to switch back and forth between these two images. But so this is an artwork that's in our collection. It is not stored in this manner, but the artist left this diagram to help us with the display of it. And what he noted in the diagram is the shadow that is cast by these artifacts, by the lighting, is very important. And you can see that this shadow is cast right here, but not so much in the other slide. So if you know that that shadow is integral to the work, then it's important to display it that way. So that's something that was not collected as part of Rasmussen, but is nevertheless, we have that information. So that's the kind of information we would like to get about exhibiting. Here's an example of a frame, a piece of framed art, where the frame somebody had put a piece of packing tape on it when they were shipping it. It pulled part of the frame decoration off. So this would be a good question to ask: is the frame integral to the piece? You know, do we have to have the frame? Because how we repair that frame, if this is just a cheap frame that is not integral to the piece, then we might just throw it away, because by the time you spend that much time conserving it, you could just buy a new frame. So that's an important issue. Here is some pictures of a David Mullet, several David Mullet pieces that these are from the Rasmussen website. The lower left-hand piece is in our collection. The one above that is in the collection at the University of the North, or Museum of the North in Fairbanks. And we were talking to the curator there, Marika Guthrie, and she said, oh yeah, we had something break on it, and we had David Mullet come over and just fix it. And he's a Fairbanks artist, so he was available to her. Well, on our piece, we had a piece fall off as well, and I repaired it in 2005, but it would have been nice to know already what had been done with it before. So, and that, that David Mullet was available maybe to consult on how to put it back on. But so that's the kind of thing that if we shared more of this information, then we would be able to know that. Here's another example, a Nathan Jackson pole. It's not in the State Museum's collection. It's in the collection of the City Museum. It was taken down in 2003 and moved to the high school here in Juneau, and it was restored by Nathan Jackson and Dorica Jackson. So they are still living at this time, and we could have access to them and they could do that. But what do we do in cases where the artist is no longer living, or what do we do when Nathan and Dorica are no longer able to work on their own poles? So these are kind of some questions that we need to ask. This was from a show, one of the last shows that we had at the Alaska State Museum. It was Nancy Burnham. She works in caustic, which is wax. She casts these artworks with quite a bit of a very thick layer of beeswax and other waxes, and she puts porcupine quill in them. She brought her own material down from Fairbanks. I believe she's in the Fairbanks area. She brought her own material down, and on its way to Juneau, it was damaged because of the change in temperature, so there were fractures in her pieces, and she found them to be completely unacceptable to have any sort of damage in them, and basically took those out of the show. And I don't know whether she destroyed them or what, but she found them to be no longer exhibitable with any kind of cracking in them. So this is something that would be very useful to know about how an artist feels about it, because these pieces are extremely delicate. So if we knew that, then we might go to extraordinary means to keep them from, I mean, we're trying to keep everything from damage, but we would be able to take that into account, that any sort of damage on this piece is, in her opinion, renders it unacceptable for display. So here's another example, Joan Horning, 2000. This you can see the drip marks there by the image, the shoes in the image. They've dripped down. This is a media. This is part of what she wanted. This is part of the piece. This isn't something that it happened afterwards. However, these drip marks are still very tacky, and we had a cover on this piece, and that cover stuck to these slightly, and some of that material rubbed off onto the cover. It would have been nice to know from Joan Horning what this is, what the medium is, why is it running like this, and what should we do in the future if dirt and dust and fuzz sticks to that. Here's another example of a carved bowl. This artist, Andy, and I don't know how to pronounce that name, Kochergan. He died in 1965, so he has passed away a long time ago. This piece was donated to us in 2007, and it had been wrapped in saran wrap. And if you ever want to know why not to wrap your collection in saran wrap, here's a good example. That saran wrap has plasticizers in it, and those plasticizers affected the surface, and they cause all of this reticulation of the varnish on it. Basically, it damaged the surface. So the question was, what do we do about that? It's obviously not exhibitable as it is, because this would give the wrong impression of this artwork. So how do we fix it? Well, Ellen was able to determine that it could be fixed in one of two ways. Either a lot of solvent could be used to reformulate the surface, or she could take very, very fine sandpaper, like 1,000 grit sandpaper, and slightly sand these shiny parts off and get them to tone down again. So those are two choices. It would have been nice to know, what the surface was and how important that surface was to the artist, and how they would feel about either one of these techniques happening. So these are just, I'm giving you some ideas about how to think about these things. So just as we said, this is the kind of information that we know we should gather, and part of what we want to do today when I finish, I'm almost finished, I think I have 3 more slides, but what we want to think about today is beyond what I've talked about: display mounts, hanging height, lighting issues, what materials they used, what about preservation issues, who can conserve it, how should it be conserved, should it be do not resuscitate, as in the case of the wax in caustic. Her feeling on it was, you can't fix it, so don't fix it, basically. And to a conservative that might sound like a challenge, but it's important to know how an artist feels about that. Or is there anything else? Are we missing anything? So that's what we want to think about today. Then, so there's what information, and the other part is how do we gather that information? Is it a questionnaire? Is it something that the artist fills out before it's collected, after it's collected? How long is a questionnaire? Is it a requirement of the artist? Or do we just take notes while we're talking to the artist? That's a possibility. Then there's some question about audio or video, so recording the artist in terms of audio or video, which sounds great, except as we all know, there are a lot of issues when you start doing video or audio recording of people. It ends up being a quasi, oral history of that artist. And there are copyright issues, is a #1 thing. There are copyright issues of who owns the work that's produced. The second thing is that now you've produced a meta work that needs to be preserved along with the work. So the audio becomes very important, or the video becomes very important, and has to be transferred down the line ad infinitum as long as that piece exists. So that's another important issue to think about. Then the question is, who gathers this info? Is it you know, the museum staff? Do we have time to do that? Or do we need to get volunteers to do that? Are there some creative ways to think about gathering that information? Should we have school groups do it as part of their learning about artists? Or should we have the artists do it themselves? Or is it a grant project? I'm sure everybody thinks, oh yeah, it's a grant project. But it kind of makes sense to have it be, at least part of it could be a grant project, because right now there are perhaps maybe 20 to 30 artists that we all have in our collections, sort of the low-hanging fruit, as it were. We could use a grant as a pilot project to jumpstart this initiative and say we're going to hire somebody to go out and gather this data from these living artists who are there. You know, Nathan Jackson, good example, is in lots of people's collections. You know, so we could do that kind of thing, and I'm sure there would be a funder who would be interested in funding that. Or is there some other thing to think about? So there's that. And then the idea is, how can we share this info? There are confidentiality issues along with it. Who's going to take on the role of protecting this information and making it available? If there are certain issues where the artist doesn't want people to know certain things, or it has some sort of proprietary issue about how their technique works, is this something that should be collected by one of the larger institutions in the state, the State Library, Archives and Museums, the SLAM, or the Anchorage Museum, the University of the Museum of the North, that sort of thing? There is an international network for the conservation of contemporary art. INCA is what it's called. You can find them online. They have a website. There's their website. They have regional groups. There is a North American group, and they do have a website and a database. And I believe Alan told me that you can actually go online there and add information to it. So is this something that we want to add Alaskan artists to as a project, as a group? We could do this, and it would be an initiative, and suddenly there would be all these artists show up on there that have never shown up before. So we could make them think that Alaska is the vibrant art scene that it is. So this is the last slide, and I hope that you all were able to follow it. I know I was talking quickly, but I just didn't want to get kicked off again. And there will be a brainstorming session Friday, October 3rd, 2014, 2:30 to 3. So I hope that you can join if you're going to the meeting. And if not, there is Ellen Carley and Jackie Fernandez. They are available. You can chat with them per email. They will both be going to Museums Alaska, obviously, and you can chat with them there. But now I'm going to mic off, and what I'd like to hear from is all of you, who have been listening. I would like for you to kind of throw out commentary. Let us know what you think of this idea, or if you have specific questions. I would recommend, however, that when you're typing, it's good to type and then hit the return key after a few sentences, because what will happen is we'll get a lot of people typing, but it's good to kind of get your thoughts out there in a short format, or type them offline on something like a Word document and then cut and paste them in. But so I'm going to mic off, and I'm going to turn this over to the group. Thanks for listening. Bye.